Late one night back in the 90s, I was flipping around on the cable stations and came across this film called Popcorn. It was one of those cheap, silly horror films. I watched it once, and 20 years later, I still remembered it for some reason. Popcorn tells the story of a group of film students who organize an all night horror-a-thon in a rundown movie theater. With some help from our good old friend, the reliable movie montage, the students managed to clean up the theater when they happened to find an old film reel. Curious cats that they are, they play it and learn the scary tale about this 70s cult leader whose films were hated by the critics. Having gotten pissed off about this, for his last film, entitled The Possessor, he included a live ending of him murdering his family in front of the audience and setting the movie theater on fire. It sounds like Michael Bay's next project. Our leading lady, Maggie, played by Jill Schoelen, who as usual is looking really cute, learns this film coincidentally is the same one as her recurring nightmares. Go figure. She tells her mom, who's played by Dee Wallace, and Mom immediately suggests they get out of town and forget movie night. That's pretty unusual. But Maggie is loyal to her film friends. She leaves the spooky stuff aside and they all start selling tickets. A large audience shows up for a fun-filled movie night, including, take a guess. Popcorn is certainly not a great film, but while rewatching it, I was reminded why I remembered it so vividly. I love movies about people who love movies.
There's more social relevance and character development in Police Academy 5 than in all of Ingmar Bergman's cinematic smorgasbord.
Well, I'm not sure what kind of film student that guy is. And along with the whole story taking place in an old movie theater, it makes it pretty fun. Just the fact there's a horror-a-thon going on with these old, schlocky, scary movies in the background, it makes this particular horror movie memorable to me. The coolest thing about this horror-a-thon is the students employ all the old gimmicks a lot of those old movies had done. 3D, Arom-A-Rama, electric seats. These are like the old kind of tricks that William Castle used back in the 50s to entice kids into the theater. Like when kids would be buying their tickets, they would see a bunch of hearses pull up in front of the theater. All these fun, innocent publicity stunts. Nowadays, that stuff probably wouldn't go over too well. Audiences are a much more cynical bunch nowadays. But hardcore movie fans or horror fans should get a kick out of seeing the students do the old trick of having audience members sign a paper saying the theater can't be held responsible if they get scared to death. The whole atmosphere of the night makes me feel like I wish I was there. It's just this big fun night that you get to experience with fellow audience members. And the old movies they show are great recreations of those old horror flicks. They're so cool, in fact, I wish they were actually real so I could go check them out. So the whole film's set in this old movie theater and a few fun movie references for film geeks. And this was back when you didn't see much of that in movies. Now it's become almost commonplace. Like Family Guy is mainly a show made up of pop culture references.
More dreams, huh?
Yep. I'm not getting any sleep, but it's gonna make a great film. I wonder if Orson Welles dreamt Citizen Kane first.
So those two things are the main reasons I get a kick out of Popcorn. But unfortunately, that's not enough to say it's a great movie. Like, I don't mind bad acting in a cheap horror film. I almost expect it. But the majority of characters, other than the villain, are as thin as the movie screen. They're not interesting, and they just say a lot of bad dialogue. Even Maggie, who's our main character, just kinda coasts through the film in a bland way. The film does have a lot of dead space. The majority of it's taken up by the old, I'm gonna go look for Johnny kind of thing. So the students waltz around the theater, either looking for a fellow student, or getting ready to cue up the next stunt for the attending movie audience, before, eek, 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 they're killed. And there's not that much suspense to those scenes. There's some sequences that are pretty surreal. Like, I'm not sure if they're a dream or real or what's going on. The whole movie seems so innocent in comparison to today's horror films that when rewatching it, I started to think of it as a made-for-TV movie. It's not gory, it's not really that scary, and there's no gratuitous nudity. But the makeup on the killer is really good. He kind of resembles Jim Carrey in The Mask in a way. Supposedly there were some problems during filming. They replaced the director, the leading lady, so there was some drama going on. I never could figure out why all of a sudden in the movie, a reggae band suddenly comes up on stage and starts performing. But then I read they filmed this in Jamaica, so it kind of made sense, but in the context of the movie itself, it still seems kind of odd. There's very little mystery to who the killer is. If you've ever seen a horror film before, you'll probably figure it out pretty fast. It's definitely not a great film, but it does have some sort of charm that I just can't help but enjoy. The film never gets too pompous or takes itself too serious. Ray Walston is pretty funny in it, even though he's only in it for like 3 minutes.
We had theaters in those days, not like these cine, omni, multi, whatchamaplex things today, with 29 screens, the size of postage stamps.
I wouldn't be surprised if he left his car running while he rushed in to film his scene. Tony Roberts as the film teacher is the other recognizable actor in it, along with Dee Wallace. The film students are mainly just a bunch of young actors, although you might recognize a few from other films. I think it could have been a great movie had they pushed the ideas, the humor, the irony further, like Scream did 5 years later, that actually rejuvenated the horror genre. I wonder if Popcorn did have an influence on it, like a lot of fans suspect.
Like he could be just lurking somewhere in this theater, just waiting to attack us.
Sounds a little paranoid.
This is great. God, Toby, what a great movie this would make.
I always considered Popcorn this small, obscure film made when the horror genre was pretty much dead. No pun intended. So I'm always kind of surprised when I speak with someone who not only remembers Popcorn, but loved it. So there's something to this flick. It's almost like Popcorn was specifically made to become a cult film. Overall, I think Popcorn is a pretty average horror film with a really fun setting. That while it isn't exploited as much as it could have been, it still makes it entertaining for me to sit through. Or at least enough to watch it every 15 to 20 years. Maybe I just like the movie theater in this. Anyway, Popcorn is available for streaming on Netflix right now, so it's pretty convenient to watch if it sounds like it might be up your alley. But it's certainly not for everyone. Maybe Hollywood should add Popcorn to their horror remake list.
Popcorn. Buy a bag. Go home in a box.